All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a great podcast today. There could be some controversial topics on this podcast, difference of opinion from, a lot of the norms that you'll see throughout society. But I think that is extremely important to moving our society in a good direction. We need to have difficult, challenging dialogue. We need to consider outside perspective, and we need to work together towards resolution. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. They're our sponsor. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company created in this community for veterans, by veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties transitioning from active duty back to normal civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. The easiest way to reach out to VetLife is to do so through Instagram or Facebook, or you can check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So let's get right into it. I'm joined by Sean Rowe here today. Sean, I've been looking forward to this podcast a ton. I think it's going to be awesome. For the people that don't know you, let's start at least a little bit with your background. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? And then let's fast forward to how did you, come in contact with me in this academy? And then let's just start to tell your story.
Yeah, first I feel like you were about to say great fucking podcast. You're like, it's about to be a great podcast.
Yeah, I mean, everything goes on this podcast. Listeners can choose to enjoy the content or not. And if you don't like what Sean has to say or what I have to say, just turn it off. Mm-hmm. It's okay. We can have difference of opinion. So there is no filter necessary today. You can be Sean Rowe to the fullest extent, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right, perfect. I like it. So I was actually born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We moved out of there when I was 6 months old, kind of like escaped my dad. He used to hit my mom. He was an alcoholic. Even when she was pregnant with me, he used to hit her and stuff. So when I was about 6 months old, we had an out, and my grandpa and my grandma, they lived here in the area, I think in Lake Sherwood, so that's like Commerce. We lived with them until I was like 4 or 5. My mom got an apartment eventually. And then we kind of moved after she got married in 2002. We moved to Milford, but ever since I was like 6 months old, I've been like Commerce, Highland, Milford area.
And Sean, what do you do for work?
I'm a personal trainer. So I do personal instruction online, in person. I run group fitness classes now too, that the gyms are opening back up. So I work for myself and for other people, but I just do fitness. Eventually I want to do sports performance. Pretty much I want to be Chris Down. Right, so I have my personal trainer certification through ACE, and then I'm also a sports performance specialist certified through ACE as well. So eventually I want to be doing what Chris is doing. I just love fitness. Like anything fitness, whether it's like fitness or sports performance, I'm super happy with it.
Absolutely. Anyone that knows you sees that in you. I mean, every training experience you go through, every time you're on the mats, you push yourself to the limits, almost in like an addiction fashion. I can tell that you love the conquest or the battle within. You love trying to push yourself to be your best, to bring out your best, and you try to do it for all the people around you in many different fashions. Some people, you try to get them to mentally break barriers that almost they're not ready to break, but it's very good for them to be pushed like that, and I think because you're addicted to the journey of self-improvement, you try to make sure that everybody around you joins in on that. And I think it's a great thing. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I want to bring up before we go anywhere else with this podcast is you do have like a really relentless work ethic, and I've seen you get frustrated with yourself at times when you're not giving your best. Where does that come from? Where does that fire come from?
Being a fucking loser, man. If you've ever hit rock bottom, the only way is up. Yeah, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, because when I think about it, that's what motivates me is where I've been. That's kind of what I built my base on, is got to my lowest point, and then I skyrocketed up from there. And I just feel like I spent so much time there and wasted it, right? Like I spent 3 years, just pretty much 3-4 years, just like in and out of jail, drinking a fifth a day, every day. Just like, I don't even remember 2012 to 2015, basically, like just bits and pieces. I don't know if what I remember is even like really real. It could all just be like fucking mush brain, So just like spending so much time there, almost ruining my life, ruining whatever potential I might have had. I've squandered a lot away, right? And so I feel like I'm just playing catch up basically with my whole life now, and it's like every second I'm pausing, I'm dead. So I just got to keep going.
What made you flip that switch?
Man, it's tough. So I have been pretty uninhibited my whole life, just like always being checked by the system. I remember being like the only kid in first grade getting like the stupid fucking behavioral cards, like red, green, or yellow, based on what I was doing the day and that day. And then, you know, they would relay that information to my parents via the card or my mom. And so I've always just been getting checked, you know, and when I got out of high school, I was drinking, started smoking weed for the first time, met this girl that used to be best friends with my sister. And then when I was dating her, she overdosed and died. And I just did not know how to handle that. And I just I was already drinking, already partying, like I was saying, you know what I mean? I was kind of a loose cannon, but then it just like turned really depressive. I just didn't know how to get out of this years-long spiral. And at the end of it, like in 2015, I was crying a lot. I was just like so alone, and I was letting my sisters know, because I have 4 sisters, right? And I was calling them in the middle of the night, just drunk as fuck, just crying. You know, I'd wake up crying in the beginning of the day, I'd go to sleep crying, just listening to like sad music all the time. This was like a long period of my life was like this, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And you know, I tried to kill myself. I spent a week in Havenwick Hospital. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like it was like a mental health facility around here. And that was in April of 2015. And I was convinced, you know, I convinced them, no, this was just an episode, whatever. I got out after a week there, but it still got worse. And then during the summer, I was still doing the same thing, calling, crying, you know, just getting drunk and fucked up. And eventually my youngest sister, Jillian, she came over to the house I was living at. She had a sit down. She's like, you know, you're my big brother. I'm supposed to be able to look up to you. It's not supposed to be like this. You shouldn't be like this. Like, we had a real, it's so long ago, it's hard for me to remember, but what she said resonated. That was like the general idea of it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a real effort. I tried a whole week to not drink at all. Couldn't even make it one day. So I was like, fuck this. I need help. Put myself into Brighton Hospital, just right over here in the area. Spent a couple weeks there. I've been sober ever since.
Man, I didn't know any of that, dude.
Yeah.
And honestly, you started the sentiment or that message with, you know, I was a fucking loser. I think you were a kid that was really struggling with a lot of pain. You're struggling with, you know, demons from the past and probably demons that have grew within. And then you had a loss of life very close to you. And when all of that is compounded onto somebody, you know, thrown into society where you have a million judgments placed on you every single day, you know what I mean? If you're not at this point, you must be this. If you're not this, that loser label was probably given to you from an outside perspective. But you were a dude that needed some help, man. You know what I mean? And like sometimes just a loving relationship, like your sister coming over there, going like, at least, you know, if one person in this world still cares about me and you care about her and you want to be a better image, that was enough to make the switch. I don't think that's someone that was a loser at all. I mean, because you don't know a ton about my background. I don't want to go into it, but like my mother committed suicide. I was with a girl for 2.5 years who was like the love of my life. I thought I was gonna marry her. She was like the woman for me. Like, she was the one for me.
Wow,
like I confided everything in this girl. Like, this woman knew everything about me. Her name was Michelle Matthews. My parents moved me to Michigan. My parents were having issues. They moved. Stepmom and dad moved us to Michigan, and that girl hung herself. And we tried to make a long distance relationship work. And I went in the same thing, man. I have no will to live. I don't care about school. I don't care about anything. I don't care about anything. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care. You know what I mean? And looking back, I could have labeled myself as like, I was a loser. I would go into school and walk out of school and go sit in my truck all day and cry. And I didn't have many friends at all. And I was a loner, and I could label myself at that period of my life as a loser. But man, I just had so many things. First of all, that didn't seem fair. Like, what did I do to deserve this shit, man? I know I got a good heart. I know I want to try to do the right thing. And like, why am I getting pummeled by life right now? You know what I mean? Like, and luckily I didn't turn to alcohol or anything, but I mean, I was just, the abyss feeling of loneliness, helplessness is, in my opinion, is the worst. And then loneliness is a close second. Like, when you feel helpless in a situation, there's not even a pathway. There's not hope. There's not faith.
That's why people kill themselves.
100%, because you just think it'd be better if it ended and I don't have to endure, because there's no route out of it. You know what I mean? And you're short-sighted at that time, because like, I look at my life now and I truly believe like I'm like one of the most blessed people I know. I spend time with people I love. I get awesome relationships. I get to travel the world. You know what I mean? Like, I really have made a dream come true. But man, that young kid, you couldn't have convinced me in a million years that this was my future.
Yeah.
I was in a car ride with my father on the way to Michelle's funeral. On the way to Michelle's funeral. I couldn't remember who said this to me before. I thought it was my uncle. But we were driving down there. He'd pulled me out of school, you know, told me Michelle killed herself. And like, I mean, that was my person, man. Like, you know what I mean? And like, it's a young love. And like, it probably wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? Especially with society. And it probably wouldn't have worked. But like that, for me at the time, like that was the love of my life, right? And like, my dad pulled me out of school, told me that Michelle had committed suicide. And it was just like, and we were driving to her funeral, and he looked over at me in the truck. And I remember I looked out the window just at nothing. Like I wasn't even looking out the window. I just zoned out for like 10 hours. You know what I mean? However long it took, I was just dead feeling, you know what I mean? Like living behind like a sheet of glass, like just whatever.
That's what depression is. Absolutely. You're just a fucking ghost behind the
it's
glass.
Just a shell, dude. And like, and then my dad looked at me and said, you know, like, I don't really know what to tell you, but maybe life really has something special planned for you. Like, and I think he like kind of jokingly was like, maybe you're going to be like president or something one day, because what you're going through or what you're being forced to go through is just not, it's not your fault. It's not. And I didn't even respond to him, but those words actually hit me pretty hard. Like it just opened the tiny potential that like maybe life will be different one day. And that thought carried me through a lot of fucking shit. So I'm instantly relating to your story because the way you classify, like, man, I was a fucking loser. Life, man, is fucking savage. And as soon as you sometimes like label yourself as this or that, you're going to live within those parameters. You know what I mean? And some people fucked up once when they were young, went to jail over a dumb decision or whatever, have labeled themselves a piece of shit. And then that guilt will carry on for the next 50 years. And that's the reason they'll never become a good father. They'll never become a good friend. They'll never rise, you know, in society the way that they have the potential of doing, because they've already created that classification. I'm a fucking loser. Can I believe I did? If you're even making that realization that you have that guilt for that, it's because it's not who you are. It's a choice you made. You know what I mean? And so anyway, not to take from your story further.
No, not at all.
But I don't see that at all, man. I see a kid that probably got dealt some really difficult situations from the young childhood all the way up, who then was like just trying to reinvent himself. And sometimes, as weird as this sounds to someone that's never had their life fallen apart, the more you destroy everything around, it almost gives you like a foundation to start rebuilding from. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have people said rock bottom is like an important place to start up from?
It is.
So you have relationships in your life and expectations being held of you. You don't want any of that. You just want like to be abandoned all the way because you feel like that. Like, everyone just get the fuck away from me. I'm a da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then at some point you either choose like, I am going to try to go on, or I'm just going to call it quits on this thing. And you know what I mean? And suicide takes tons of people's lives because they don't ever open that door. For you, it might have been that conversation with your sister. You know, for me, maybe it was the thing my dad said to me, or at some point, for some reason, you just like have a little bit of hope. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're checking yourself into the hospital. You're not being taken there. You're doing that. And now you can proudly sit here across from me today and be like, this many years later, I have not drank since.
That's crazy, man. For how long? It's like 5.5 years. It doesn't even seem real. It's so fucking long. And I remember all of it now. Like, I don't remember a large chunk of my life, but I just remember everything now. I'm like, Josh, like, I'll fucking sit there and I'll think about it, you know? Like, I remember everything. And I decided, well, okay, so I tried to kill myself and I couldn't. I got up on the chair. I had the blanket around my neck and everything. I just didn't take the step. I just couldn't do it. So basically I was at my friend's house. I got blackout drunk and I ended up pissing all over it. We were at his mom's house and I ended up pissing all over her basement floor. And I blacked back in and they told me what I had done. And I was just like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I gotta
level
go.
of disappointment, another failure.
Dude, I was the king of peeing everywhere on everything. Oh my God. in the worst of it, I was peeing my bed at least once a week, at least. And I just like blacked out and pissed all over this basement floor. And then they told me what happened. I was like, all right, I was like 10 miles from my parents' house where I was like not even allowed. And I'm just like, I'm walking to my parents' house for whatever. And I get there, not from walking. I made it like a half mile and I called him like, can you just drive me? So he drove me totally in silence. And I got there, I drank I like know their code for the garage, right? So I wasn't supposed to be there, but I can get in. So I get in there, I steal a bottle of my mom's wine, just fucking slam the thing, who knows how long. And I'm just sitting there thinking so short-sighted, like, dude, well, if I just kill myself, then I don't have to deal with this at all, period. Like then it really doesn't matter, you know? And so I wrote a stupid fucking note. I did the noose blanket they have 2 floors, so like from the upstairs, put it around my neck, got on the chair, and I just couldn't do it. I just stood there like crying, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was super drunk. I got like to get the courage and everything, and I just couldn't. So it was like at that point, I guess pretty much retrospectively, at least now I'm looking at it, like that's when I decided that I'm locked into this. Whatever the life is, I can't check out early. So a couple months later, I talked to my sister, and then that was, I guess, the beginning of like, okay, I got to try to do something about making this better. If I'm here, all right, here's where we're gonna try to make it better. And that was like the exordium of that was talking to her. And then, yeah, here we are 5.5 years later. So,
dude, I had that the way, even verbatim, the way that you just spoke that, where if I'm going to be here, I got to try to make this thing better. I had that exact moment where I remember one of your favorite words is fuck. You say it all. I remember going, you know what? If I'm going to fucking do this thing, I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks, what they tell me I have to do or should do or shouldn't do. I am going to live this life following my heart, and like I'm going to try to make something of this because, you know, one thing that really, really bad times do is it gives you a good perspective on life. And when you've gone through some extremely dark or difficult things, the everyday is not nearly that level, so you can handle a lot more. It almost stretches you, is what I'm trying to say. It stretches your psychology. Mm-hmm. Like if you had an easy childhood, you breezed through school, you were this and that. If your dog gets sick, that might be the end of the world for you. That doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, yes, my dog is sick, but there's no there's no emotional connection there. Like, yes, I should feel sad, but I don't. Like, because you know what true depression, emptiness, loneliness, nothingness feels like. Yeah. So all of a sudden, in a weird way, you get this kind of like you break out of the norms, or this like it's almost like you come online and go, you know what? I'm gonna live this thing my way because I've already decided if I'm staying in this battle, I might as well make it my show. You know what I mean? And a lot of people that I've talked to, they have had that exact moment. They've had that moment where they decide, okay, I'm gonna go on. And if they do, something changes. I wonder if that's a little bit of like taking your power back or something. Like, because before there's a helplessness, there's I'm a fuck up, I'm this, I'm that, I'm blah, blah, blah. I just piss on this person's basement. It's not even worth going on. And then at a certain point, you do take a little power back and go, no, I am going to get up. I don't know what today has in store, but I'm going to get up again. I'm going to do this thing. You know, and like now, imagine if you could you even communicate with that, Sean? If we could put you in a time machine sitting here today, the man that is consumed by personal progression, who I see show up, showing discipline, showing character, showing work ethic, building his own brand, leading other people to finding success. Can you imagine if we could hop in a time machine and go to that Sean, and you could even try to talk to him? You know what I mean? Like that's how much this human experience can change. And it's fascinating, man. Like I am now like just fascinated by life, because I think the more you see a broad spectrum, you just realize how wild this experience is. Because there's a lot of people in parallel universes, if you could duplicate that Sean, that would have stepped off that chair.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, man. I think that's actually kind of, you hit it on the head. Just like once you decide to live life your own way, that's the way it goes, and everybody else can kind of just get fucked. That's the realization I kind of came to. It's like, I'm already dead. I'm dead every day. I die every day. And then if I die for real physically, it's really not my fucking problem. Like I'm already there. I'm ready to die right now walking out of this studio. You know what I mean? Like fucking bring it. I'm going hard as hell until it happens.
And that's where almost it will then come down to the moral compass of the individual, because you decide to take control back, but you also decide that you don't need validation from others. You don't need acceptance from others. You're going to be who you want to be. That is a dangerous thing, because you could end up being then a horrible human being because you don't care about society's opinion of you. You don't care about the rules that were laid forth that you have to, like, that's one thing that I do know I'm problematic about. I don't follow rules that don't make sense.
Same.
I don't. I can't.
Why would you?
I already hit that bottom level and I almost checked out on this thing. And so I say, listen, unless something makes sense or is logical, I'm not just going to do it because you wrote it down on a piece of paper. I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? And like, I'm not going to be sneaky about it. I'm just going to openly say I will defy this, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you can take that down a dangerous road, because one person that no longer cares about the opinions of other people, that is going to pursue their happiness. What if their happiness comes from some sadistic and terrible things? What if
that is me too a little bit. I am a little bit sadistic. So I wanted to say that when you said like, oh yeah, you like building people up. I'm also just mean, and I like fucking hurting people too. I found a way to channel that into something that's acceptable in society and that can earn me money as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I do just like I'm so used to violence, you know?
You have an extreme duality of your personality that's really at the front, okay? Like, because as much as I could picture you being on the mat, helping someone on their weight loss journey, building them up, motivating them, giving them a diet plan, making them feel awesome about their life. I could also see you on a new person in jiu-jitsu, knee on their throat, strangling them to death, covering their mouth, hoping they psychologically break to the point of tears to be like, keep going. You know what I mean? And that's just, it honestly is who you are. And one thing I think about you is you're extreme in who you are, in the good, in the bad, just in general. You are very passionate about everything. You know what I mean? Like, even in debate, we've had debates in here before in the morning, which I'm sure we're going to get to, about like where if the topic of anarchy comes up, you are extremely passionate. It's just who you are. And it's actually, it's very cool to see, because it's from someone that at one point in time was not living passionately with any real purpose at all, to now all of a sudden you are a very passionate individual. You are someone that is going to try to find out how far you can go in everything you do, good and bad. That's where you're really going to have to always keep some sort of check on your own psychology, because those are people that could go extreme off the rails one way or the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but at the same time, though, we have a system of checks and balances in society of other people. So if an idea it doesn't have utility, it might resonate with people, but it won't go very far unless it has like utility and it actually works inside of the world.
I'm talking about if Sean decided that I'm going to kill people because that's what makes me happy, you already don't care about rules. You don't care about a lot of things. You don't need validation from other people. And if that's what you decided to do, that same ideology of like, I'm going to go through this experience the way I want, people could go down that path. And you could go down the path of, the mind is a dangerous thing.
Yes, sir.
Because it can go down any avenue. And I believe every human being on this earth has good and evil within them, if you'd want to classify it in that sense.
I do. That's how I classify it. Yep.
Okay. I believe that, like, because I've heard people like, I could never take someone's life. If your child's life was on the line and someone was going to kill your whole family, you couldn't take someone's life?
It's the idea of developing your shadow. It's Carl Jung, the psychologist.
Of course, Carl Jung.
Yep. So I listen to Jordan Peterson a lot. 2017
Jordan Peterson as in the Wolf of Wall Street?
No, is that the same? Is that his name?
That is his name, isn't it? Jordan Peterson.
Jordan B. Peterson, professor of psychology from the University
Thank you
of Toronto.
for clarifying that. A lot of people might have listened and go, he is following the Wolf of Wall Street's policy.
No.
And it might not be Jordan Peterson, but when you said that, it reminded me of Wolf of Wall Street.
It's Jordan something for sure.
It definitely is.
No, he's a psychology professor. He came into the public spotlight. He was like really vocal opponent of the C-16 bill, which is like mandating speech in Canada under threat of punishment from the government. Like you have to use people's fucking pronouns like zer, zay, zoo. Yeah, so it's Bill C-16 in Canada. I don't know if it's legal or whatever. So a few years ago, he was a really vocal opponent, lost his job at Toronto even for being so vocal about it. But yeah, he wrote this book, 12 Rules of Life. It's a great book. He's also wrote other books like The Maps of Meaning and stuff. But he's publicized a lot of his lectures and then his book as well, just like kind of being around those and diving into his material. It's really helped me turn my life around. One of the things he really bases it all off of is like the idea of cleaning a room at the beginning of the day and then just kind of building the wins on top of that, right? And then even if you have a shit day, you at least come back to a made bed.
That's intelligent.
Yeah.
That's intelligent. I don't want to get off topic, but yeah, good and evil exists in everybody. And I think your environment, the people that surround you, the way you choose to live your daily activities, steer you in one direction because you're constantly presented with choices that are good or bad. You know what I mean? And like, and obviously there's differing values of those good and bad. Some things may be kind of a neutral decision, whether you do one or the other, but you're going to face times where there's good decisions and bad decisions. And I've had conversations with Brian actually in particular about this before, where like most major decisions have a tipping point. You don't just, unless you're, you know, such a sporadic person that on a whim you decide to do something life-altering. Most people don't. Most people have an idea that slowly either manifests, if it's a good thing, and grows and gets better, or festers and gets worse and worse and worse and worse until a tipping point of like, I'm going to commit this action. You know what I mean? And I believe that a lot of the times the people that surround you, the information that you take in, what you bring into your life is really going to be whether you're getting pulled this direction or that direction. And if you don't keep a close watch on your mind, you know, it can take you down dark places, you know, and that's going to be your legacy. And some people are probably okay with that. You know what I mean? And like, who knows? We never know the inner workings of someone's mind. But like my goal, at least with anyone I interact with, is I want to try to push people onto the good side of things and make them see the value in that, see why benevolence matters and how building somebody up is good. Yeah. But the same way that like on the mat, like I will try to take someone's soul from them. You know what I mean? But
I've been there on the bottom side of that, and it's fucking frightening, man. It's like what I have nightmares about is just you on top covering my mouth, and I can't move my hips at all.
But it's like, that's where I believe that people like you and I, and there's a lot of people like us, are extremely either powerful or dangerous people because you're not guided by much else other than yourself. Just because a piece of paper says something or a book wrote something down, that really doesn't hold much sway.
No, a law is just an opinion backed by violence. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, and we'll get into that topic, but that really is a lot of, and I know a lot of people that are on the opposite, and I can't think like them. I know a lot of people that like you could put into law like don't touch a table, and they like wouldn't touch a table, even if they know like this doesn't hurt me, I can put food on it, I can.
So that's the idea of the statist, is that they believe that the rule of the state, which is this organization that has control over law, over a territory, right? They think that that's the best way to deal with societal problems. So whatever mandate comes down from the state, whether it makes sense to them or not, they believe in that system of governance, and then so they submit themselves to that. That's where that comes from, which obviously sounds fucking idiotic, right? Like look around, you see everybody with a, fucking mask on their face.
We might as well just get to it.
Yep.
and I think what they do a genius job at is they tap into the emotional side, and they tap into like, it's compassion. Don't question whether something is right or wrong. That doesn't matter. It's just considerate. And if you don't do it, then you're just not a considerate member of society. Whereas in my opinion, any critical thinker should not perform action without knowing why they're doing the action. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just tell me to do something and then not tell me why I'm doing it. It's the same reason I'm probably an entrepreneur. Like, since I was a child, if you showed me a job, like let's say Jason Zawacki was just, and he runs flooring. If he showed me how to do flooring and explained the why, I would do it that way if it made sense. If I found a more efficient and more effective way, and I could produce the same or better results, I would do it my way. Now, if Jason then, as the boss, as the state, as the person said, I don't care what you're going to do, you are going to follow this exact process to get this result, I would dispute it. And I would argue with him, and I would say, no, I'm getting a better result. You know what I mean? I might be causing less stress. I might be being better on my body. As long as I'm not doing worse and I'm doing better, I'm going to do it my way. And I don't think a lot of people are wired like that. No. And I've been like that forever.
I run red lights all the time. All the fucking time. I get excited doing it.
There's no one around at all. You're in the middle of nowhere and you go, I'm not going to waste 30 seconds of my life sitting here when I checked left, I checked right. There's no one in the vicinity at all. I'm putting no one at harm. I'm just... I know the exact thought, and I'm trying to find a way to rationalize it to someone that wouldn't think like us.
Well, that's it. Rationality.
I have to try to rationalize, like, how would someone else perceive because it's, if you just say it bluntly like that, they only take it as like, wow, what an asshole. How could you do that? You just put someone at risk. That is how it would be perceived.
That's so nonsensical to me. Who the fuck thinks like that? What kind of fucking dense motherfucker thinks like that?
Most people, because most people would say, but it's the law. Because if you run red lights, you could put people in danger. They don't think that, like, if I'm on a country road and there's no one around at all, it makes no sense for me to sit and spend 40 seconds of my life simply because the colored bulb in front of my face says that you have to sit here.
Like, you can, in that situation, you can direct traffic way better than the traffic director, which is the traffic light. So it's like, in that instance, get fucked.
But... And it's funny that when you say this to me, it makes such clear, perfect sense. And I've had the identical thing. And I might as well just admit it. I've done the exact same thing. And Stacy's been like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? But in my brain, I'm like, why would you sit there? It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, what if the government told you tomorrow you're allowed to eat once a week? I'm going to eat more than once a week. Mm-hmm. Well, if they say, well, that doesn't matter. The new law says that you have to only eat once a week. I'm not going to do that. Now, if you could explain there was an extreme food shortage and people were going to be starving and dying and and if we all work together, okay. Then
well, that's the thing.
If I understand the why.
They put it in there with benevolence. That's how, because laws are multifaceted, right? Like speeding tickets. Of course, going way, way fast is super dangerous. So unregulated, of course, everybody's going to go 140 miles an hour because the law is the only thing keeping people from driving that dangerously, of course, right? So under that assumption, it doesn't matter that the state is fucking you for your money with every speeding ticket they give you because you're going to go 140 miles per hour and put everybody else in danger if they're not doing that.
I mean, how else could you justify it, though? You have to almost get people to go, you got to trigger their emotions and go like, look at this major thing. You don't want this, right? Because you don't want this, we're going to implement that. And if we implement this, we're going to take your money to teach you a lesson. Mm-hmm. That's how we're not going to like, come up with some rehabilitation program where we show you why it's important not to harm other people. We just want your money. You know what I mean?
As punitive justice at its finest. That's the problem with the whole system is that it's punitive instead of restorative. And that's why we have such high recidivism rates. We'll get into all of it. But yeah, that's the whole point is they don't give a fuck if you do better, if you get better. They don't even care if you kill other people as long as they're getting their money off the top of all of it.
It's a crazy system for sure. When I was over in Finland, I remember they were driving me through the city and they were like showing me all around Finland, the couple cities that I was in. And one of the things that fascinated me was that we drove by a prison and the girl that was giving me the tour, her name's Voku, she was saying like, oh yeah, we can barely keep prisoners. Or like we rehabilitate people here. We don't believe in like keeping people in jail. That's not healthy unless they're like a psychopath that is just going to murder human beings. We just want to get them back to being healthy members of society. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's really different. Mm-hmm. Because here in America, we just like label someone a criminal and then we drag them through the justice system forever.
And it carries with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And like, remember the labels thing we talked about at the beginning of this podcast? Then they label themselves. And then do you think that person's going out and try to be the best father they can and the best? They've already labeled themselves, I'm a loser, I'm a criminal, I'm this, I'm that. Or they're so filled by animosity and hatred towards what they've gone through or maybe at themselves that things aren't going to get better. What if you had a system where you actually try to help people that are good people that may have fallen into bad circumstances? Maybe the Sean Rowe that was going through those experiences, that definitely was bouncing in and out of the system and having all these things, was a kid that desperately needed to get his life back together, that had gone through a ton of shit. And if anyone took any value in that person and said, you know what, we can turn this thing around, there's a way better chance. Suicide levels would drop. There's a lot of things that we could fix, you know what I mean? But when there's money involved, because I've seen it like, and here's how it works. When you're getting screwed by the system, like when you're the broke kid that's getting pulled over and harassed by the police and having all these things go on, you just adamantly hate the system and you're angry and you want change. But everyone on the other side doesn't care because they're not a criminal. You're the criminal. Shut your mouth. Stop being a criminal. And then once you get out of the system, you know how broken it is, but you're just like, you know what? At least the spotlight's not on me.
Exactly.
At least they're leaving me alone now. My tabs are updated. They're not blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to be involved with all that bullshit again. That's just not the answer because you know it's broken.
Yep.
You know that we have to come together and say, is this healthy, what we're doing? Are we promoting people to be good people? Or is this almost like a form of classism where we just attack poor people that don't have their lives together? You know what I mean? And
that's
like
exactly it.
Profiling's been around forever. The police absolutely know you're driving a shitty little car down the road that doesn't have their tabs. Your life's probably not together.
Most people in jail are poor people, and that is you can look that up. The Prison Policy Initiative, that is from 2014. Most people in jail are poor people, and 74% of the people in jail have not been sentenced for any crime. They're just in there because they cannot afford their bail.
What?
Yep. I got the quote right here, the stat right here. 74% of people in jail are not convicted of any crime. So you have pretrial detention responsible for virtually all net jail growth in the last 20 years. That's also from the Prison Policy Initiative. So the jails getting filled up in the last 20 years is solely because people can't afford their bail.
So you're telling me, let me look at this. So someone gets taken to jail. Mm-hmm. They're provided legal counsel.
That's a fucking joke.
No, and trust me, I'm going to go into that because I used to laugh about that when I was young, like crazy. Like, they work for the system.
Dude, I had
alongside the other people.
They're buddies.
And
they're buddies.
And they're going to represent your best interests when you're, in their eyes, the criminal at their workplace. That would be like you and I'm the boss that wants money out of somebody that commits an issue. You're my best friend. You work here at the company. When someone walks through the door, I'm going to say, Sean, why don't you represent them and we'll come to a conclusion together. And then at the very end, you go, you know what? I tried my best, Paul. James is correct. You're going to have to pay him. What? That makes no sense. I remember cracking up when I was young. Like, wait a second, they work for the court? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't they be intimately tied in
They're all
to the
in it
system?
Together.
You know what? You start fighting the system. Guess who's not going to work for the court? You. Duh. Does anyone have to think about that? Does that mean every public defender out there is a bad person? No. There's probably good people out there that do try to actually fight for their clients.
There's good people that are cops too, right?
My cousin is a perfect example.
It's not about the person though. It's about the job and what the system allows as far as individuality goes. And that's one of the things with police. That's why they wear uniforms. They want uniformity in their actions, right? The uniformity of law and authority. Same thing in the court system, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, the court system, I mean, the amount of overhauls that I think everybody knows, everybody knows that things are just not right, and everybody knows that we need to make change. And hopefully a lot of young people are starting to have these conversations and are starting to become more educated, or at least seeing things for what it is. It's like the veil is gone. The illusion is shattered. Like back in the 50s, they probably had people sound asleep behind the television, believing in the American dream.
Oh, yeah.
The illusion is gone. We know that things
Not all the way. Not all the way.
Okay, to anyone that looks into anything, you're going to go, wow, this is not the justice and freedom and,
You would think so, but I think like 200 million people just voted in this election, and to me, those people are all still asleep. So the way every conversation, it's tough because it's like, what do I believe and what is truth? It's really hard to say because things are a lot of things all at the same time, and everything's always changing. So it's really hard to get a hold. But I typically like group conversations of an idea into like 3 different things, like box 1, box 2, and then kind of like a space for the third one. So let's say like the idea of government. Box 1 would be like the idea that we can vote the right person in there to do the right thing, right? Box 2 would be more the idea of sortition. Like, do you know what sortition is? So this is how ancient Greek people used to pick their people that were leading whatever, political groups or whatever. It wasn't even really political like that. 1-term limits, and then they would select someone from a group of 501 people randomly. All the interested and qualified parties, they had like this fucking dealio to like randomize the selection, right? There was no campaigning, no elections, nothing like like that. Random selection from the population of qualified and interested people, and they only serve for a year, because obviously elections breed fraud and corruption and stuff like that. So you can still do this, but on a much smaller scale than some motherfuckers that are just in Congress for like 60 years pulling all these puppet strings, right? So that's box 2. That's like a radical idea, but it's halfway between the ideal and like the current structure. And then you have like what I call the space, which is just kind of where more esoteric ideas, and that's like where anarchism and, you know, voluntarism and stuff like that, where I just don't think it would work in this world because of the people that just wouldn't accept the idea. So it's like it's like a form, you know, like Plato's forms, like the perfect ideal.
Yeah. I won't go much onto this, but I had a woman in here earlier say that I'm not going to name who it was, but she's extremely high up in the politics of Michigan. She knows the inner workings. And through long conversation, at the very end, once she had told me about everything that's going on and good and bad and pros and cons, it's almost like little gang wars. These people are just recruiting people into their ideology to support what they want into their, it's like little cliques. Mm-hmm. And this clique is trying to gain power while this clique is trying to gain power. And they're using, you know, playing into people's emotions to support them or be against their enemies, or it's like little gang wars, dude. And
it's big gang wars.
Yeah,
international gang wars. Yeah.
At the top. I mean, gangsters run the world, and I mean gangsters in the way of like the people that will
like the U.S. government and their military, like those gangsters.
They'll do anything for power and control, and at the end of the day, you are either with or against. You know what I mean? And like,
yeah, the U.S. has over 200 military, or a base in over 200 countries in the world, a military base. How many military bases do you think we have here in the United States of foreign countries? 0. Yep.
I was thinking in my head less than 10. I would, even on allies that I would even guess.
Not even an embassy, a military base.
Oh, yeah.
A military
Got
base.
it.
0.
I was trying to count embassies.
0 military bases, and we have one in over 200 countries in the world. This is a fucking imperial conquest, like the motherfucking dark side from Star Wars.
I mean, I think most people would agree that we got the big stick
Most
policy.
Most people wouldn't. Over half the country just voted in the last election to keep this shit going. To me, that says that people don't believe that. And people want to just,
you know what's
keep
bizarre? Trump is the only president, at least in a long time that I can remember, that didn't put us into a war. Isn't that correct? Like, no, I can't remember the last time we were at war, and I don't, what war, I mean, obviously there's always little things going on, but no declared war did I witness during the last 4 years of the presidency.
He increased drone strikes by over 300%. The number I was seeing the highest was 430%, and he dropped more bombs in Libya during his first 4 years than Obama did during his whole presidency. So you couldn't say, maybe he didn't start any new wars, but he definitely escalated the wars, just like Bush, just like Obama, just like motherfucking Biden's gonna do. That's the thing, all these Republicans and Democrats and the left and the right, they just like care about these box one problems, right? And it's like, it is much bigger than that. And these are the same wings of but different wings of the same monster, fucking up the whole world, murdering people, blowing up all these poor people around the country, poor people in this. Statistics are, it's hard to get them, but 70 to 90% of the people killed in drone strikes are innocent civilians. You know what I mean? Like, these aren't boots on the ground in your face. This is blips on a radar. Boop, see ya.
No, man, I've since I've been a young kid, I've adamantly been against war, just because the idea, like, I don't know, and maybe it's idealistic viewpoint, but just the idea of going somewhere else and killing Sean's and James's and children. Like, man, I teach a kids jiu-jitsu class, so I try to think about, imagine another country, if we were the third world country, coming over and blowing up an area, and some of those kids I knew died. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't I become radical? Why wouldn't radical ideas emerge and people hate that country with a burning passion? They've lost loved ones. They've lost people close to them. You know what I mean? And just, I don't know. Like I said, it's probably idealistic, but just the idea of going somewhere else and fucking people up and expanding power just seems wrong, man.
The thing is, people, you said it, imagine another country. A lot of people cannot do that. A lot of people are so ethnocentric that they can't even imagine what another place is like. Fucking California. They can't even imagine California because they've never even left their state, right? Like, that is the reality for so many people. And
that's weird.
It is weird.
I mean, you're a person, and there are people in other parts of the world.
It's the best place in the world. Why would you want to go anywhere else, right?
No, that's like saying that pepperoni pizza is the best thing that you can eat. That's an opinion.
I agree. I agree. I'm saying that's hyperbole. That's that's what people think. It's the best. America's number one. America's always been great. There's nothing wrong with it. Fuck all those other poor motherfuckers that don't look like me. We're number one. I'm number one.
Yeah, and we need to take the younger generation and start pushing those bad ideologies out of the way and just say, no, that's just not real. That's not true. That might have been indoctrinated. That might have been from the time you were young. You're like, I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Well, who's indoctrinating? It's the state, right?
I remember as a child, and even to this day, any single person that's around me, and I'm going to get tons of shit for saying this publicly, but I don't really care. It's my podcast.
Fuck it.
I don't, like, during the pledges of allegiance, I'll stand. I don't salute. When I was a child, the words really started, like, I break things down. I can't help it. It's the way my brain works. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Okay, what if the flag, the symbol of the nation, is doing things that I don't at all support? What if we're doing horrific things? And I'm just speaking hypothetically. Mm-hmm. What if we're doing a million horrific things? Then I wouldn't pledge allegiance to that flag. I do love my country. I do think that things can be better, and I hope we continue to work to make them better. I love the country just because my family's here, my friends are here, the people are here, but I've traveled. I've been around the world. I've been to tons of different countries. I've met wonderful human beings of all ethnicities, of all religious beliefs, of all social statuses, wonderful people. So I realized, like, man, these are just people. You know what I mean? I'm proud of my country, but I mean, the people in Finland are proud of their country. The people in Brazil are proud of their country. And then there's things that they're not proud of. Then they go, oh, well, we have this and we have this and we have this. But when you apply any blind allegiance to anything, you are asking for problems. I mean, and that's as simple as if you're a Republican and you just blindly follow anything that the Republican Party says, you're as much of a problem as the people that you demonize on the other side and say that, like, these are the enemies. If you shut off critical thinking because your team already made the decision, you're not being a productive member. We need to get back to people that have ideas and opinions that are not deeply attached to who they are so that you can discuss them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like I am not religious. You may be religious. Someone else may be religious. I'm not mad at you if you're religious. I have a different opinion than you. You know what I mean? And through intelligent debate and conversation, we can work through what is closer to truth and what's further from truth. Because I can tell when you just said one of your sentences, I am tormented by the fact that I can't pinpoint truth. I hate that, like, well, when there's two sides to every story.
So fleeting.
That drives me nuts because I'm like, there's not two sides to the truth. There is the truth and not the truth. And I have this idealistic approach where all I do is relentlessly pursue what is real, what is factual, what is evidence, what can I prove to you irrefutably.
You ever tripped on acid?
No. But people don't like to think like that. Whenever I try to, like, even have debate like that, people just, like, they attack the fact that I'm not being compassionate enough or I'm not being emotional enough because I am, like, in this, no, it's the truth. Like, I have, like, a mathematical brain. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when I look at these things, I don't care if you're let me bring something up, like the Me Too movement. I don't give a shit if I was a Democrat and Me Too was big and we were attacking Kavanaugh. Okay, I would attack anyone that sexually assaults someone. I'm against you, right. 100%. Whether you're my father, friend, acquaintance, stranger, enemy, don't care. I'm against you. But what happens is people start going like, it's only, we're only really against it if it's not on our team. That is a horrible way of thinking, dude. We need to get back to, like, if sexual assault is wrong, it is wrong regardless of who commits it. If my mentor, someone I look up to, someone I idolize, sexually assault someone, I will not follow or respect that human being. Anyone should understand that type of thinking. You know what I mean? But we've gotten so, maybe it's because, like, we're very tribalist people. We've gotten so group-like that it's just like, no, don't go against the herd. I'm here today, and I'm sure you were going to talk more about this. Go against the herd. Question what the masses say and figure out what is the spirit behind that. Is it good or bad? You know what I mean? And as soon as you have blinders or, like, a blind allegiance, we're never going to solve any of these problems. I heard Tulsi Gabbard, who's a Democrat, who's on Joe Rogan. I was watching.
Is that like one of the candidates or whatever?
Yeah, I believe I don't remember what office she was running for, but she was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And like I said, I haven't voted Republican. I haven't voted Democrat. I love information. I love trying to understand people. So I'm watching her on there, and she's talking about just how broken the system is. She goes like, when we had our inauguration day, Republicans and Democrats come in the same door together, and we feel like we're a part of something, we're going to make change. She's like, and then right after that, we split up, and now all of a sudden Democrats are kept over here and Republicans are over here. And if you're a Democrat, the only thing that matters is like getting wins for your party. And it's the same if you're a Republican. And if they draft legislation, even if we support it, even if it's like, wow, that's actually good. If the Republicans bring it up, we're going to oppose it. And then if we redraft it in a year, we'll support it 100%. The level of stupidity, as I was consuming this information, I'm probably just like I'm looking on camera right now. I'm like, how are we that dumb that, yes, there are fundamental differences that people can have. There are people that are fundamentally different on abortion. There are people that are fundamentally different on certain things. Fine. But the second you go, whatever my party says, I'm going to support. Whatever this people say is evil. That is the dumbest fucking thing I have ever heard of in my life.
Well, that's your average voter, bro. That's your average voter. So
we need to stop it. And you know what? And I think everything in society makes it that way, dude. The media spins it one way. These terrible Republicans are out here being white supremacists, destroying things, and you should hate them, and they're making the world more hostile. And then on the Republican side, these liberal snowflakes are trying to fundamentally change this nation and strip you of your freedom. And then
I love the announcer voice, by the way. That's great.
Dude, and you just got these zombies on both sides that are like, that's the problem. Maybe it's the system that is just regurgitating the same exact broken formula over and over and over, that is just dumbing people down and shoving information into their brain and saying, look in here, you little idiots, think this. You know what I mean? And like, it's so like everywhere in society, even the free press the other day, every word is selected in the way that like, experts and lawmakers say that blah, 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 blah. No, they don't. Okay. Experts and lawmakers have differing opinions. There's going to be lawmakers on this side and experts on this side and then on the other side. But they're presenting information in a way to go like, you're not an expert. You're not a lawmaker, you idiot. So consume this bit of information and realize that you're wrong if you don't agree with it. Or you know what? Take comfort in the fact that you're on the side of experts and lawmakers.
Dude, that is so on point. People rely on the expertise of other people when they're ignorant themselves, and then you can tell them whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, dude, just throw someone on TV with a suit and list some credentials and have them speak in a certain way. They could preach.
The credentials is the key. He's a scholar from fuckity fuckville.
They could preach the dumbest bullshit ever, but if they said it in the right light on the right station at the right time, people would follow it. Hands down. How did we get, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did we get to that point?
Well, it's lack of education in the education system, wage stagnation after the May Day protests in 1971, where you have to work longer for your money to have the same value, right? So people don't have the free time to protest. And also, they don't have the energy to think for themselves. So you just dumb these kids down, and then you go make them tired workers that work all day long, 5 days a week, and then they just want to fucking chill and do nothing all weekend.
And they have very little, and you shove so much entertainment down their gullet 24/7. Like, you're so entertained, you never even have a moment to stop and think for yourself.
That's what the Coliseum was, right? Like, they just fucking entertain the people with blood, and they won't even give a fuck about what's going on over here.
Yep. Actually, in Gladiator, that quote when they were talking about like how to get out the emperor and stuff, he's like, man, he'll give them blood and they'll love him for it. Like, he just entertained the masses, and they're like, ah. It's like, I always joke around with people that are close to me and say, like, I don't even think things are that much different than they were back in like Roman times. It's just more whitewash now. I do believe there's still like controlling parties that really pull most of the strings. Like the people at the top, it's a pyramid system, and you're either with the team or not. And if you are not buying into the same ideology, you're only going to climb so far. You know what I mean? Or you'll be silenced. If you get high enough up and you start ruffling the wrong feathers, they're just going to silence you. Whether that be through physical violence or censorship or whatever it is, they're just not going to let you get a bigger platform because you're just not supposed to rock the boat like that. So how in the world can you ever make fundamental changes to the system when it's like cancerous from within? You know what I mean? Like,
I've actually kind of given up hope on it. I just don't believe in the rationality of the mass of people. It's how we got to where we are today, and people are, I think, more easily programmable than they ever have been. Short attention spans, an overload of information, whether it be true, false, mostly false. People just don't know what is what. It's hard to get a hold on anything, and people are just looking for some sort of truth. So it's tough, man. I don't see us coming out good on the other side of this.
Now we have fact checking. If I got to be fact checker, okay, so let's pretend this is a community here in the gym. If anyone said anything, speak for 5 minutes, I promise you, no matter how intelligent or correct you are, I could fact check it to some degree. I could find a way to say, well, technically, his statistic on this was, or like, I could find a way to fact check it. So now we have a censorship level of just like anything that we support is cool. Anything that we are against, just fact check it. Just convince everyone else, just continue that like, you're right, look at this fact checker. There's this woman sitting behind the desk at Snopes. She just verified, as she spoke to God. She spoke to a divine being, verified that her opinion is correct, and then published these results. What?
Yep.
Opinions change over time. If when I spoke out in April and said the coronavirus is absolutely not a 3 to 10% mortality rate, we are missing asymptomatic cases by the droves, that is silly because you don't take hospitalizations versus deaths and make mortality rate.
That's crazy.
You have to take all mild symptoms. You have to take people that don't go to the hospital. You have to take people that don't show symptoms. They would have fact-checked me as wrong. They would have said, you're wrong, shut up. And you know what? There's no consequence for the fact checkers. It's not like, except me going back and be like, ha, told you I was right. The time passed, and during the time, they silenced you. They told you, shut your mouth. You're not allowed to say that. This is not what we're doing right now. Quiet, little James Gray. You don't have a voice in this fight. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, I feel like there's a lot of things that are going to take us. It might get worse before it gets better. Again, the unnamed person that was here today, big in politics, one of the things that I brought up to him today is like, listen, we don't go out in the street anymore and communicate. That's not our freedom of speech anymore. We don't stand out with a sign on the side of Grand River like, this is my opinion and everybody should listen to me. That'll get you nowhere. We communicate through an intricate web of social media and online interaction.
I used to do that, by the way, and yeah, it did get me nowhere.
It gets you nowhere. Yep. You could be 1,000% correct and have the most revolutionary ideas that could structurally fix the country that you reside in. You're going to get nowhere. And you know what I mean? And they know that. So now all of a sudden we have a platform through which people communicate, and everyone's like, well, James, it's a private company. They can do what they want. You don't have to use their service. You're then saying this private company is not subject to laws of the land. The First Amendment gives people the ability to speak, right, and then be judged accordingly. If you're saying some loopy shit and you have no facts backing your information, as intelligent people, we should quickly discern that this is not reality. This person is detached. We're not going to make them a leader. We're not going to follow that person. We're going to let them rant forever, right? We just saw the president of the United States of America censored by big tech.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Can you imagine being a child when we were learning about our government and checks and balances and power and da-da-da and freedom of speech and the First Amendment? I remember I bought into it. I was like, you know what? Justice is real. There are good people. You know, if there's ever anything bad, like, there's a way.
My grandma tells me I used to want to be a cop when I was a little kid. I don't fucking believe it at all.
Dude, I bought into the American dream to the fullest. I remember growing up thinking that like there was good people at the top and they were fight for you. You know what I mean? And justice was real. And then like you get all those illusions shattered and you realize how corrupt things are. But we're at a time now where like, can you imagine if when you were a child, you were going to hear one day a corporation through which all people communicate would censor the president of the United States of America? Just that level of control. As people, you want to feel like you have a voice. If you're giving away that type of control, stop it. Where are we going? What Orwellian society are we going to get to when the president, elected by the people, maybe legally, maybe not, I don't even want to talk about voter fraud or whatever's going, the president of the United States of America can be censored and silenced by media outlets and the social network community. Holy shit. How could we ever promote major change? Or let's say you or I truly had 100% benevolent beliefs and we worked our way up through the structure because you'd have to play the game to work your way up. So
that's why everyone's like, Donald Trump's the savior. It's like that motherfucker wouldn't even gotten close to that position if he wasn't playing ball. What are you talking about?
Without a doubt. So you have to play the game but let's say you had this insane plan. Let's speak from the biggest fantasy world ever right now. Donald Trump secretly worked within the system as he's just a businessman who had never been in politics, who goes, you know what, this country is falling to shambles. I'm going to find a way to win the Republican primary. I'm going to get into office and I'm going to fucking ruffle feathers. I'm going to go into D.C., drain the swamp literally, and go after these career-long politicians who have never had their feathers ruffled, who are not used to some loudmouth, arrogant guy going, look here, bitches, we're changing stuff. Let's hypothetically say he did that. It won't even matter anymore.
Like really got elected, truly.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Got elected, got in the office, gets all the way to that point. The media can just silence him, not report anything he says, never allow him to directly interact with the people. Social medias can completely censor him from being able to reach out to people. You can't make change. They have such a death grip on the system that anything that challenges the system will be silenced. And that's not even talking about murdering people. Did you hear about
literally silencing
literally
people.
Silence them. Did you hear about like the dude in Georgia that just committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest with the rifle?
No.
I'll talk to you about it after the podcast. Extremely, important person in what's going on right now. Shoots himself in the chest with a rifle. Oh, what a suicide.
Sounds like a Seth Rich situation.
Dude, there's so many cases of that, and it all just blows over. You ever notice that? It always just like, oh, you crazy conspiracy theorists.
Well, the media get to, like, the big tech
they get to tell you.
What's important, what's news right now, what should be keep circulating. The only reason we all keep fucking hearing about COVID is because they keep telling us about COVID. Fuck, Like, if I didn't go on internet or whatever, I would have no fucking idea.
You wouldn't even know there was a pandemic.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know. A couple people in this gym have already had it. They're like, yeah, I got sick for a couple days and I got better. Like I've done every other year since the beginning of my life.
Right.
Like I got sick, and then I got better.
I trust my immune system way more than I trust not just like vaccines or anything like that. The source of information where that shit is coming from, telling me that this is what I need. This is like, I just don't trust the motherfuckers telling me that shit. You know what I mean? Like I've been burned so many goddamn times. Like we were talking about the flag, like, dude, the only people to ever take away my freedom, throw me in jail, they all had that fucking flag patched on their shoulder there. Like, damn, man.
Probably said, "In God We Trust" on the side of their car, and they had a flag, and they said, "Hey, I'm just following this piece of paper." And
dude, that's the cop out with these. So here's the thing with police:
I'm just following orders.
That's the thing, man. It's the cop out, and maybe it's because they're allowed to ban you from being a police officer if you're higher IQ. I got it right here: Jordan v. the City of New London. 2000 was when it was upheld by the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York. They ruled that his 125 IQ was too high for him to be a police officer, and they stated that it was just because he would get bored with the job. But what they really want is low IQ, just take your orders, don't really question shit about shit. Anybody that wants to go look that up, Jordan v. the City of New London.
They want you to be a drone. Like,
yes.
You're programmed. Go do what we say, little drone. Get out there.
At least 40%, and this is off a study from 1991-92. New information is scarce, so it's a little bit older, but 40% of police officer families experience domestic violence compared to 10% in the regular population. So not only are they low IQ, they're also easily manipulated, emotional, and a lot of them have substance abuse problems as well.
Now, he is just using pure statistics right now. He is not saying the gentleman that you know that is a police officer is that 40%.
He might be, though.
He might be. He may be in that 60%. He may be the top 1% of the best people that you've ever met in your entire life. But that's statistics. And I always look up everything I talk about on the podcast after because I'm fascinated by things like this. That is a disturbing statistic.
2 studies, both of them done, one in 91, one in 92 from the National Center for Women and Policing. and new data is scarce. So that's what we have to go off
I
of.
wonder what the population pool was for that. I wonder, how they randomly selected. I wonder, because you can't just take like, okay, let's take all police officers that have anything on their record and then we'll make a generalized statement based on all of them. It has to be random. Otherwise, statistics can be manipulated so easily.
You proved that with the coronavirus stuff.
Remember I put out like the flu thing versus using the same exact way that they presented the statistics for corona. The flu was at like 7% mortality rate.
But just think about it. You have this lower IQ, average, let's call him average IQ individual, right, with no source of repercussions for anything he's going to do. Like, police kill people all the time and they just get rehired somewhere else, right? So how easy would it be for this guy to not even just legally get away with this because his associates aren't going to file any charges on him, might not even believe the lady, but how much is she going to be too afraid to even report him in the first place? I was in Mexico last summer. I spent a few months down there, and I met this girl, and she was raped by her ex-boyfriend who was a police officer, and I was like, let's go fucking do something about this. You know what? Fuck even reporting him. Like, she was afraid to obviously report him, but even just to do something just because of what he is, he's like an untouchable Roman soldier.
There is a brotherhood level to it.
The thin blue line.
There is a brotherhood level to it. And I don't want to take thin blue line as some good people, good families with police officers would take that. And it's just a pride in the fact that their person is a police officer. But the thin blue line for the people that are using it corrupt, that are making a brotherhood, that are covering the tracks for people doing terrible things, you're a bad person. And like, if you get offended by that statement, that means you're a bad person. Because I'm saying there is definitely people on this, like my cousin, for an example. He was my best friend my entire life growing up. He's a great husband. He's a great father. He's a great human being. Like, he's just had a good heart from the time I've known him. He's a good person. He's an officer in Philadelphia. And I was saying to him one day on the phone, I go, dude, with all because all the uproar, we had to defund the police. I was talking to him during that time when they burned the police station down in Minneapolis, and there was real outrage at police, people getting shot in their cars, and it was bad. I watched someone get run over in traffic. I watched a guy in Missouri get shot in the face on Facebook Live, died on Facebook Live. That was a weird video to watch.
Yeah, I believe it.
I watched him die right on the sidewalk on Facebook Live.
It's crazy.
I'm like, I just witnessed a police officer get shot in the face and bleed out and die. And I'm talking to Shane about it, and I go like, bro, like, why don't more of these bad police get caught? You know what I mean? Because I trust his opinion. I really value who he is, so I believe him. And he goes, dude, they're not as dumb as you think. They know who are on their side or who aren't. And they're more careful than you would think. They're not just blatantly going around and abusing people that, like my eye could go, this guy did this, I can 100% turn him in and prove that. Because all of a sudden you make accusations against somebody and you don't have any evidence to do it. Now you're black sheep. Now they'll just make sure that you're not around for anything.
Exactly.
So you really need a strong, he's like, they're not dumb. They know, he's like, and don't get me wrong, I know there's corrupt police. I know there's bad police. He's like, but catching them is a lot harder than you think because you got someone with authority. You know what I mean? That knows the system so well from within. They kind of know what to watch for, what is being recorded.
And they're the arbitrators of justice. Like, who's going to guard the fucking guards, man? That's the age-old question, and it's so true. There's so much room for corruption, and they use every little goddamn inch of it.
Yeah, because you just said it extremely well. There's no like. This world would be better if there was a God that was just overseeing things and said, no, this person is lying and did this. Plop, you're not, you know what I mean?
Like an instant arbitrator of justice.
Yeah, man.
Well, so here's the thing. Life is so complex. God's plan is so complex. And it stretches out across the vast expanse of time, right? Like, we're all just a blip on the timeline. So good goes on for eternity, right? Generations and generations. So your small part in the role of the world, it might just seem like all, horrible
100%.
and not good, but all you're responsible for is your actions and how you can try to make the world a better place. And it only makes sense if there is some sort of arbitration of justice in the end of it. Otherwise, it's all for fucking nothing.
Sure. And I think that's a discouraging point, is there's just justice just doesn't come naturally. And people
Not
that
right
are being
away.
corrupt, they do everything they can to dodge it and make policy that protects them. And it's a difficult system because, like, I'm sure there are a lot of police officers across the nation that know there's serious problems. But imagine just being in that system, knowing how fucked up it is, and then trying to change it. It's just like you or I as an average citizen. Isn't the government of the people, for the people, by the people?
No.
Is it though?
No, of course
But that's
not.
what it was designed to be, right?
I don't think so. Not with elections and this sort of oligarchic, quote unquote, democracy we have.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, just as helpless as you feel about your ability to elect an official to actually represent you, that's going to care about Sean and the average person. And you know what? They're not going to take the millions of dollars from a lobbyist and push that agenda. No, they're going to get into office and they're going to just represent good families moving towards better. It's discouraging because you just lose faith in it. And then all of a sudden you're just like, nothing can be done. And then you become jaded. And so I bet you police officers feel that way too. You know what I mean? So we got to make sure.
Maybe. A lot of them fucking
Good
thrive
ones.
in that. Well,
Good ones.
It almost doesn't matter if you're a good actor in a bad system. You're contributing to the overall goal of the system, and that's to generate revenue for the state.
I would say 99.9% of people are all of good people are good actors in a bad system then, because people know things aren't right, but they don't know what to do to solve it.
How many of those other good actors in a bad system have a license to kill? How many of them are riding around throwing people in fucking jail, ruining lives?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Following their rules.
Dude, it's the ruling class. So that's what police really do. They generate revenue for these corporations, the town of, the city of, the state of, right? Those are the corporations. And then they protect these public officials from private citizens. Those are the two real functions of the police.
So if you had to look and say, how would we beat this system? Because tearing it down in anarchy is a very wild, far-reaching. This is going to sound weird to you, and you're going to dispute this big time, but I'm going to say it. What if everybody just followed within the system enough that you couldn't imagine if people just said, okay, they're going to set this ridiculous laws, we're all going to do it, and now all of a sudden it stops. They can't get revenue from speeding. They can't do this. We're not doing that. We work within the dumb game that they set forth, and now all of a sudden there's zero money coming in. If there's no money coming in for a state's going to change something. They're going to go like, oh, this is not... What if people just worked within the stupid boxes that we're given, and you pull up to the red light and you know it's the dumbest thing on earth?
Like you just
but you go, I'm not going to give my money to a system that thrives on catching me in dumb things that make no sense at all. I'm not giving my money to those people. I don't support them. I don't support their mission. I don't support what they stand for. They're not taking my money.
Well, I'll tell you right now, and I don't even care about admitting this publicly, I'm not paying taxes on my fucking personal income for my business this year. Anybody else can get fucked if they think they're coming after me. Suck my dick. Second of all, when I work for somebody else, they already take taxes out, and I really can't do shit about that. But I don't think that's just not feasible. What kind of life is that?
We can all not speed.
Who wants to? But on top of that, they're taking 4 months of your life of work and just lining their pockets. Who wants to do that? That's the system. That's only been around for 100 years, the income tax, since 1914.
Yep. Never fully ratified and da-da-da-da.
Dude, yeah, it's exactly. It's not even technically legal, and it's brought up as a defense all the time in court cases about people not paying their taxes.
I think the actual verbiage in the IRS handbook at one point was to gain the maximum voluntary compliance of the income tax law. Voluntary compliance, to me, at least the way that I define those words, and who knows if a trial, a jury would back me on this.
Yeah.
Voluntary compliance means that I have to voluntarily agree to these terms. Mm-hmm. We've been taught since we were children, the only two things you can't avoid in life are death and taxes.
Watch me avoid that shit right now, motherfucker.
You know what I mean? And you know what? Obviously, I play within the system. I have this... And it's fear, I guess, that promotes it, because, like, I have an accountant and I'm on him all the time. Like, am I compliant? Am I good? Are my business taxes filed? Am I all set? Because it's like, that, like, if you get tried by jury, you can be right, Sean. You could be 100% correct. You could be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're correct. And those 12 people that are indoctrinated since the time they were born, who look at you as you're the problem. Can you believe this terrible member of society refused to give his income to this corporation that doesn't give a shit about him? Can you believe this man? Find him guilty. Send him to prison. Guess what? You're going to prison. Mm-hmm. Well, that's nuts, dude, because we believe, I know you're like me this way, we believe that, like, the facts and the information should be, like, I should be able to stand on that, right? I should be able to get up there and prove my case beyond a reasonable doubt and say this is what it is, and people should go, that's correct. And it's just not set up that way.
No, it's not. It's set up so that you lose and they win. It's like the house in a casino, right? But I used to try to fucking, like, argue my way into existing inside of that system, like fight for justice. Like I said, I was on the streets, with signs, police are terrorists. 9/11 was an inside job, this, that, and the other. And they are terrorists if you think about it. They just go around and inflict fear on the population, like you better do this or else,
Well, Sean, that's a viewpoint.
Dictionary definition of a terrorist.
What?
For political gains.
I'm gonna give you another side of that argument. What if Shane is driving around and people that know him go, "Wow, that's a member trying to keep the community safe. That is a man that if I had to call someone broke in my home would try to come and help me. That's a man that if he saw me out on the street and
I'm so glad you said that. Keep
100% people could view that person as a form of protection. They definitely could. The elderly woman that cannot defend herself at all gets a sense of safety when she calls the police. You look at it very differently. You look at it as like the situation is worse, it's more dangerous, and I'm sure the facts show that when police are involved, there is a higher rate, but it is within the realm that you believe. Like if your ideology tells you this person can help me, this is a good thing in society. If a criminal is smashing the front door of my store and I can't defend myself, the police could come and help me. They may see it from the angle. Not all people will look at police as terrorists.
Do you think that, before I go into the stats, do you think that's what the stats show, is that the police are around here protecting the community and they're out there stopping crime? Is that what you think the stats show?
Here's what I would say. I believe that it depends on what statistics you're going to bring up, and I look forward to hearing them. But what I would say is police absolutely do intervene with bad people on multiple occasions too. And I don't think you're giving any light to that side. I think you're focusing on the other side.
No, like I said, things are more than one thing at the same time. Of course, there's benevolence to these public officers that are going, public safety officers, right? They go around and kind of enforce these laws that are supposedly there for our public safety, right? And of course, I'm sure, your
domestic
cousins,
abuse. Bro, if someone's getting, a woman's getting enough shit beat out of them, the police show up and take that bad man away.
Not always, but sure, that is definitely part of their
good.
job. That's definitely part of their job, right? Not to say that the private sector couldn't do that better, more efficiently, and
the private sector would just be a form of police then.
Right, but a much more efficient. So I got an example of that too. There's one already in Detroit that's been around for over 20 years that does a much better job than the Detroit police. A lot of people contract them for private security. Actually, in this whole country, there's 1.1.
Yeah, but that's involved money. You have to buy those people. That's called private security. You have to pay for that.
How do police get their money?
Yeah, but like the average person that's just paying their taxes, they know that they're going to have a police force.
They don't have the police, let people keep their money, and then they can pay these much more efficient, much more safe private security companies.
I would agree that most businesses probably run things much more efficient than government because they have a purpose to do so. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to make more money if we do a better job and we have people's back. I could see that argument.
Even outside of that, the police are a much different example because they're low trained. They only get 6 months of training, less than a barber, less than a lawyer, far less than a lawyer, right? How are these motherfuckers going and enforcing the law they don't even understand or know, right? But also, Dale Brown Threat Management. These guys have been working in Detroit for over 20 years, right? Because the Detroit police, whether they didn't have the funding or the staffing or whatever, like robberies, break-ins, all this stuff. This guy's been around for 25, 27 years now. But in the video I saw 5 years ago, and I just saw it again, it's still on there, right? In over 20 years, anybody that's ever asked them for help never got hurt or killed. None of their officers have ever been killed, and they've never been to court. And the reason that theirs is different is because they try to de-escalate things and they try to police with love. The police we have now, their most important thing is they want to get home to their family, right? And if that's your main goal, everything else comes beneath that, right? And the way that Dale Brown, he's really particular about his hiring. He wants non-combative people, genuinely altruistic people that put the people they're protecting first, right? Based out of love, and it's a much more efficient system. They do a lot of it for free because they have a surplus for the corporations that they work for. And there's only 666,000 police in the United States, public police, and 1.1 million private police. So it's already something that's a reality. And that's actually the reality in most countries is they have more private police than they do public police.
But we're almost getting back to the issue of poor people wouldn't be able to afford that. And you're going to provide that luxury for all the people with the most money.
They do that for free. He already does it for free for people that can't afford their services because they have a surplus from the corporations they work for. And escorts in Detroit, escorts for like what you're opening your business or you're closing your business, $10.
So I do think there's definitely room for improvement for sure. But I mean, and there was a lot of things that you covered right there. But like, I'm sure if you're a police officer and let's say you are stopping people for breaking the law. Let's say for whatever reason you are stopping people for speeding tickets. You've probably seen videos of someone pull a gun and shoot police officers. I've seen them on YouTube, and I mean, it's rough. Imagine if that's you, and you might be the most altruistic, good human being. It could be, let's say it's me out there, and someone was doing 80, and I pull them over, and I go, hey, man, like maybe I'm just going to give them a warning. Maybe I'm going to pull them over and say, hey, man, you got to slow it down. You're going way excessive. I'm going to let you go. You're all set. And that guy kills me. Let's say I'm walking up to the car, and that man kills me and takes me from my family. That's a reality they have to deal with, Sean. They have to. They don't know the people that they're going to interact with. They almost, that like all police are paranoid.
Maybe he shouldn't have forced the interaction in the first place. Maybe he should have just let the dude who was doing nothing in the first place to anybody else just go
80 down the highway.
I did 90 probably on my way here. Look, I didn't kill anybody.
80 in a school zone, but you could. Like, let's say a kid goes out and then you
could
run
get
that
someone
kid over.
sick with coronavirus. Why don't you wear a mask?
Sean, I can support the ideology that if you're in a school zone and there's children all around outside, you shouldn't have people doing 90.
That's common sense, sure. We were just talking about doing 80 on the freeway.
Let's say I see, okay, let's just change the circumstance. Someone is, because you disputed the fact that I should have been interacting with them. So let's figure out a situation where I should be interacting with them. I went to a domestic abuse thing. The guy might try to kill me. I pull this guy over for doing 90 in a school zone or through a subdivision where there's children. That is an intelligent interaction. We want to stop that, right? Regular people maybe could do the same thing. They'd have the same risk. They don't want to take that risk. Maybe some do, maybe some don't. I try to stop this person, and then he tries to take my life from me. Mm-hmm. That is a certain level that you do have to have empathy, well, at least understanding for.
I do.
That is a difficult situation to be in.
You also got to understand current police tactics escalate that. They're trained in escalation of force. A lot of what Dale Brown does, and he really hammers on this point, and they do weekly training. Fucking regular police don't do that shit. They actually go to him for weekly training too.
When you say they're trained in escalation of force, break that down.
Okay, so a police officer has to win, right? If you don't get out of the car, like he'll rip you out of the fucking car. And if he'll break your shit, tase you and rip you out of the car. Like that's the next step. If you don't listen to what he says, you're not going to sit there like you're his buddy and try to talk you down and talk you out of the car. You won't get out. I'll get you out, motherfucker. That's how the police behave. And that's not how this Dale Brown behaved. De-escalation of force is what they train. They want to avoid violence at all costs. And then
what if someone is refusing to listen?
So another big flaw with the police today they're so poorly trained. All they want to do is shoot someone because that's all they know how to fucking do.
That's a bold statement. That's a percentage. That's not all police.
Okay. So if there's not 8 of their buddies to just gang up and beat this guy and arrest him violently, let's say in the worst case scenario of like 8 people arresting one person, I can't imagine that when it's there, it's going to be if there's 8 cops already for one guy, I'm sure it's not going to be nice, right? So short of calling the backup, what are they going to do? If they don't know how to fight, if they don't know how to grapple, they're going to fucking shoot the guy.
It almost sounds like you say that police should just be going through more training on violence. Like they should be more effective with grappling. They should be more effective with controlling themselves, with controlling a suspect. It sounds like you're saying they should have more ability.
So I think the more ability you have to administer violence, the more capable you are, the less of a necessity it becomes. Like
I believe that.
Like people don't want to attack somebody that's going to be able to fight back,
So what
right?
should an officer do? They pulled over someone. They showed on a computer this person is wanted for murder. Okay, they tell them to get out of the vehicle, and the person doesn't want to listen. What do you do, Sean?
Well, see, this is a tough conversation to have because we're still talking in box number 1. I want to be in box number 3 where we create such a society that violent crime, the reason for violent crime in most cases, over 70%, income disparity, right? We can create a society that's not so driven on hierarchies.
People aren't so desperate that they're forced to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
Drug addiction is the same thing. The current data shows that if you create an environment where an individual can thrive, all their basic needs are being met, they won't have any interest in using those substances. That's what the data shows. So if we can just break out of this, who's the right guy? What can we vote in? It's like, no, let's get rid of this whole system and create something much better where these won't even be problems that need to be addressed in the first place.
Yeah, and that's a really challenging thing because all the people at the top that are going to make all those decisions, they're bought into the system. They're on board. They're lifers. You're going to come up with that ideology and they're going to say, anarchist, you're terrible. When really the essence behind what you're saying is very good. I can tell that you actually want things to be better, but also the way that you word them, you won't communicate well with the average person because they don't see the spirit behind it. They just hear the words and this person.
Yeah.
I think if you, because you are emotionally attached to the idea that like you don't like police, you are emotionally attached to, you don't like any governing body, like you're very, but if you could find a way to remove some of those feelings and just break down, like, because what you're saying right now, it does make sense. You would want to do things in the best possible way that you weren't forcing people into desperate situations. You want to have solutions for these societal problems that like we all know are kind of broken, but it is like a full restructuring. It's like it's gotten so far to the point where everybody in our age now, I think because we're so connected, we know that things are just not right, man.
Yeah.
And we want change. But the problem is as soon as you get overly emotional attached to one ideology, it does kind of shut down. Like I'm catching some of the things because I know you as a man. So when you're saying like all police, I know that you mean all the police that you're referring to that do these things.
Well, it's the job. It's not the individual. When I say fuck the police, it has nothing to do with the guy. Maybe the guy is a piece of shit too. It's this system of law enforcement going around enforcing this immoral code.
So you got to think though, when people hear those words, they think of their brother in uniform. They think of their grandfather that spent his entire life serving. They think of the best human being that they know that's a police officer. And they go, that man just said, fuck that person. He is a piece of shit.
And that's okay. They're allowed to be ignorant like that, just like they're allowed to be ignorant and try to vote in this system of oppression that controls my life and that's caused a lot of havoc in my life. They don't have zero consideration for me when they're like, yeah, I like this candidate. I think he should be able to enforce his ideologies on the other part of the population, whether or not they agree with me. My guy, this system, that's what I like. They have no consideration for me when they support that.
But I think, and I'm going to challenge you with this, I think the only way that we could ever make revolutionary change is when free thinkers and critical thinkers and people that really do have good ideas that could structurally change things and make this a better existence for human beings, if we learn to communicate in a fashion that doesn't trigger the masses to shut off their minds to what you're trying to say, to get to the elements of what really needs to be fixed. As soon as you start using terminologies and stuff like fuck the police, you've already lost your audience. And if you are trying to persuade people that like we can do better, because I know your message is actually like there's a better existence outside of this fucking madness. We will never get there if we don't learn to communicate intelligently enough where we can convey the message and the meaning without the like shut off effect. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. Well, and the problem, I agree. Like theoretically, it makes sense. I think people are just too dense. They don't care what other people think anyways. They just want confirmation that what they believe already is right. That's the average person. And I just don't think that we're going to get out of this system. I think that we're going to ride this motherfucker till the end of time, at least till the end of my life. And I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm not trying to coerce anybody. I want a revolution by personal example, right? I want to live my life my way. You know, it's not just good for me, the individual, that it's good for the group, and not just for now, but for now and for later, right? Like, I want to do my version of that in the world. And if that resonates with people, that's great. If people want to ask me about it, how did I get this, where I am, what do I kind of believe, I'll tell them. But I'm not out there on the streets anymore trying to fucking convince people. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, I think people are too far gone. My uncle just kind of gave me shit. He's like, because I said this, he's like, oh, we invented that statement. Anybody over 30, I think they're just too invested in the system and they're too far gone. Like, it would be silly for me to think that anybody over 30 could really just buy into the idea of shut it all the fuck down, let's start from zero. They're just too far gone.
Well, people just mellow with age, and when they're younger, they have these, you know what it is? They
You're
still
right.
have these powerful beliefs that the world can be better, and like, you're just full of spirit. And then with age, I think it's you get broken down so many times and you witness examples of such good people get absolutely steamrolled and you lose faith in things.
That
you know
and
what
hormones. Around 27 is when you
your
kind of start to peter
testosterone
off.
starts to slow down.
Age is the number one predictor of violence, and violent criminals are the least likely to reoffend because you put them in, you murder someone, they're gone for 30 years, and then after that, they just don't have it in them anymore.
Yeah, no, but I think language and communicating together is a key to change. And I don't think any major change comes if you can't connect with people. And I think that could come from frustration. Because a little bit of that is like, well, I'm not putting all this fucking energy because nothing's going to work. Then we're never going to change it.
Yeah.
What if everybody that's on the come up decided, we're not a part of a party. We don't belong left or right. We're not rich or poor. We're people going through this experience together, and collectively we're going to demand that things change, and we're going to brainstorm ideologies, and we're going to compare ideas, and we're going to really use our critical thinking. That, you know what I mean? We don't care what the news tells us. We don't care what Fox News says. We don't care what CNN says. We don't care what you say. We want to figure out for ourselves what are the better ways to solve this problem. Because a lot of times I think just the masses make it difficult. I think if you took all the 400 million or whatever it is in this country and you broke it down to 25 people that you randomly selected, like your earlier example.
Sortition, yep.
You could come up with a better system for a lot of things.
At least a much more representative of the populace, right? Like it wouldn't be this old rich fucking white man every goddamn time that's been in there for 60 fucking years.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
dude, and people keep voting. I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Ramsdale and I had a long conversation where he chastised me because he was like, I can't believe you've never voted. He's like, you're such a leader. Like, so many people look up to you. You have a big impact on countless people that you interact with, and you don't vote. I was like, Mike, I don't believe in the system, dude.
Yep.
That's what I said. I don't believe in the system. I hardly believe that my vote actually matters.
Well, it doesn't.
What I mean by that is I don't believe the incredibly powerful and wealthy and rich are going to allow someone that is a speck to them, a piece of dirt. You know what I mean? You're going to allow me to steer the direction of the country when you're the people at the top. Stop it.
Why would they give a fuck what you think about at all?
At all. So honestly, I'm going to say this, and again, this is something I'll probably get shit for. Legitimately, I don't think that who you vote matters at all. I think when you think you're voting in an election, you're like, maybe locals, like little level things, because then they're at least trapped within the system. But when you're like voting at the most elite levels, I believe those decisions are made way beyond like, oh, James Gray from Fowlerville, Michigan was the tipping point to say that this is the new direction of the country.
Right.
Shucks, boys. It looks like we have to pack up our things, stop the corruption, and we'll go the new direction. Stop it. Do you think any ruling class, powerful people through human history, you think you can go to the cartels and say, hey guys, I've polled the people in this city and they don't like what you're doing, so maybe you guys could just take it elsewhere? It's just silly, man. You know what I mean?
Silly.
So it's, you know what I mean? And maybe I'm just jaded too, because I just don't even put the energy into it. I put the energy into my life, into the people around me, into the things I can control.
You should.
And I believe I'm taking that vote, and just like George Carlin, man. George Carlin's like, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. That was like one of his famous things, that he was talking about politicians. He's like, they don't care. They don't care about you at all. At all. And that's the thing, man.
I can see him now doing
I'm going to send you the video later. It's priceless. He's like this little old man on stage, like, they don't give a fuck about you at all. And
it's true. It's so fucking true and obvious if you take a look.
So at the end of the day, I mean, there really is such incredible changes to be made, but it starts from, we have to get back to thinking. We have to get out of teams. We can't overgeneralize. We can't stereotype. We have to look at things based on evidence, reality, and information and say, how do we combat this thing, this problem, with better solutions for the future? And I do believe, maybe it's not you and I, whoever makes this change eventually, if it ever takes place, has to be a master of communication, because when you trigger emotions and when you generalize, it just closes the door before you can even get the ball rolling. You know what I mean? We need to have honest conversations, and it's so difficult because people attach identity to what they think.
Yep.
So as soon as you bump into that, you're going to lose them. You have to... It's almost, you know why it's almost impossible? It comes from, like, you and I have mutual respect for one another. So because there's mutual respect, even if you had the furthest different opinion than me, I care about you. I want to listen to you. I want to try to understand where you're coming from. I want to try to compare what you're saying versus what I think, and why do I think what I think, and where does that come from? So because of that, like, mutual respect, I want to understand. Take out that mutual respect and demonize the other person, there will never be progress. And maybe that's by design. It's like a big football game. Like, get them either all on this team or this team, and let them shout back and forth about what team is winning. And you know what? You're going to make no progress. Because if we came back together with mutual respect to solve complex problems and we actually try to do this, we could make change. It is 5 o'clock. The kids' class is starting. I guarantee you that's the phone call I just got. Sean, we need to do a part 2.
Yeah,
because
for sure. I got so many bullet points here.
We have only scraped the surface into the things that I want to talk about with you and further into this. So what I'll say is I'll send you some dates within even I think next week I have a couple dates following. Let's do a part 2. I'll get part 1 online and then we'll go from there.
Let me put one quick point. You asked me how I can connect to these people. Maybe it's not through my language. The first thing we need to do is have them disconnect from this first system for them to be able to connect to something else, right? When we stop a car, we don't slam on the brakes. First thing we do is to step off the gas.
Phenomenal point. If people would first, even if you could just admit things aren't the way that they could be, it could be better. If you could just start with that. Remember that doorway we spoke about in the very beginning of this podcast? If you could just open the door in your mind to say, maybe things could get better, then we could have conversation that could lead to a better future.
Some room to grow.
Bro, we will do part 2. Sean, this was phenomenal.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it, brother.